I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing, and I want to bring on my speakers here. I'm going to bring on our CTO, Matt Sosman, and I will also bring on our VP of Business Development, Brendan Neary, to come join us for this discussion. I'm really excited about this. I did some homework. I hope you guys will be proud of me, but I found
Uh-oh.
out, yeah,
Uh-oh.
I know, isn't
We're in
that
trouble
crazy?
now, man.
Yeah, and so I
You always
have a
do
ton of
homework. Come on.
questions, and I'm not going to hijack the call for these questions, but I am very, very curious about how, these Microsoft cybersecurity reference architectures fit into the greater picture of the security adoption frameworks and the zero trust models. Like, how does that all blend together? And I've noticed that there's a lot of different architectures for like different audiences. So I just wanted to, I know where you're going to go into that, but I just want to know that I
Yeah.
did do homework and there's a lot to unpack here. So,
Awesome.
There is.
Hey,
There
you
definitely
know,
is.
you know what? I don't think we should let Justin off the hook here. Should we invite him up on the stage?
oh,
What do
yeah,
you think?
Why
I think we
not?
should. Let's
If
put
if
him on
he's
the
on
hot
here,
seat.
let's get him up on the stage. He can
All right,
Get
participate
let's
in
him
the
up.
go.
questions.
Get him up here.
Um,
Hey, while we're
sorry,
doing
Justin.
that, Matt, I have a
Yeah.
question for the audience. Because I know we got a broad range of partners on this call. Some of whom do a lot of work around security, some it may be newer for you. I'm curious to know, show of hands, who has never seen the Microsoft cybersecurity reference architecture? Who's never seen it? Just curious. Is it like, okay, there's one. We have one brave soul. Okay, good.
I hadn't seen it till
Okay.
yesterday.
All right, cool. And that also shows you're listening too. Thank you for sharing. Okay.
And I cannot wait to see 115 slides from Matt.
Yeah, I'm going to put everybody to sleep. That's the plan. So we're going to spend from 11:09 to 11:59 going through all the slides.
Yeah.
It's going to be great.
Oh, that's great.
Actually, let's do this. Let me show you this slide, and then Brendan, why don't you cover up one eye and tell me
Uh-oh.
the finest print you can read on this slide? Uh,
Good
That's the
Lord.
one I
It is
found
an eye chart.
yesterday.
Well, and you're right, Matt. This is an eye chart, but it's an impressive eye chart. I have to say that. Having been on a number of calls with clients where we present this, it definitely is impressive. And one of the things I was going to share with you, Matt, and the team is, to me, what I love about this picture is that if you're newer to the security conversation, there's a lot going on. I mean, clearly, right? There's a lot to think about when it comes to security. And so when you hear different components, you wonder how much of the iceberg, right? How much of the tip of the iceberg am I listening to? But this picture right here is the iceberg. This is it. This is a great way. So if you're newer to it or you're trying to get your head around identity and access or any of these concepts, it's a great reference point, hence the term reference architecture, to really understand this is the iceberg, right? And all of the components live in here as it relates to cybersecurity. So I just wanted to share that thought because for those that
yeah.
may be a little newer to security, it's a great reference tool.
Well, I
So
think it's a
Matt,
good point. Like we've
yeah,
got partners from all walks of life on this call, and I don't want to like go really deep on security. I mean, those of you know me, you know I can, but I want to try to cater to all the audiences. I mean, we're going to have Dynamics people on this call. We're going to have Azure people. We're going to have modern work people um, who may not necessarily care about security. Now, my job here is to kind of make you care, right, and consider it. But Brent, I think you bring up a great point. Like how can a partner from any walk of life, how can they really take advantage of this? And you and I spent a lot of time talking about this. I got you hooked on it.
you did.
And something you've been talking to me about is for our clients out there, when they get asked about cybersecurity, how do they talk to their leadership about it? You want to talk a little bit about
Yeah,
your story there and
yeah,
what you
yeah.
usually ask me and ask the clients when it comes to reference architecture?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and here's the thing, right? When you look at this reference architecture, you're going to see clearly a lot of Microsoft products, but we all know that our clients, most of them, are not 100% Microsoft. They've got other products that may be occupying one of the functions that you see in this picture. But one of the things we like to do is to actually ask a customer or propose that we'd like to take this reference architecture and build it in the image of their current environment, right? So obviously many of these things will be removed, but this is an object that can be ungrouped and you can remove pieces and you can craft this to look exactly like the client's current architecture and use it as the basis, as you said, Matt, to create a roadmap, right? Like what pieces of this architecture do we want to evolve over time? But more importantly, if you're a CIO, VP of IT, how do you explain your security posture to the CEO? So let's take Justin, for example. Here he is. We brought him on the call. We forced him out of being an anonymous participant today. When Justin hears a great, interesting 60 minutes article on some virus that come up, he's probably wondering, man, how are we protected? Like, what's the story, Matt? What do we need to do based on what I heard on 60 Minutes last night? Matt can call up this picture and go, well, that virus you heard about would impact us right here. You can go to endpoints and devices. You can say, and see these tools right here? That's the tool that's going to protect that virus from hitting us. Got it? So again, it's a way for our clients, I think, to tell a story, not just amongst their own team, but even vertically and their peers that don't really know what's going on with technology, but they all are worried about security. Who isn't, right? So that's kind of the story, I think, right, Matt, that
Yep.
you were kind of
Yep.
thinking.
That's kind of where I wanted to start. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really, I mean, what we're talking about here is how do we demystify this? Because it's highly technical. So how do we make this into something that the boardroom cares about, that the CIO cares about, that the CEO cares about, the CFO, that the business cares about? How do we elevate this from just an IT thing to a business thing? And what you just hit on is, in my opinion, exactly how we do that, right? So if Justin were to come to us and say, what are we doing to protect ourselves against ransomware that I heard about on 60 Minutes? Well, let me pull out our cybersecurity reference architecture and walk you through the investments we've made and walk you through what we're actively doing to protect ourselves. The key part there is I have a plan. And so if I didn't have a plan, that would be a bad conversation probably, or a conversation would go very differently. And then Justin kind of poke it apart and say, okay, hey, thanks for the plan, right? How are we doing on this and that? Do you need funding or budget or whatever? If I didn't have a plan, that'd be a different conversation. But now let's reverse this a little bit. So Brendan, you're the partner.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm the customer, and then Justin's the CEO of the customer. What if I didn't have this? And I didn't have any kind of an architecture to show Justin. You'd probably want to work with me a little bit to figure out how do we help you develop an architecture to put you in a good position that you've got a plan together for cybersecurity at your company, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's just it, right? I mean, with Justin, you're not going to want to try to talk through everything you see on this slide verbally. He doesn't have time for that. He doesn't have the interest. What he wants to know is, can you just show me real quick? Hey, where is that ransomware? Got it. You got it. Wonderful. Let me get on to being a CEO and do what I need to do. So
let me share my screen. Let's make this a little interactive. So I'm going to share the actual PowerPoint version of this. And Shannon, if you wouldn't mind putting a link to this whole deck in the chat window so the partners can go download it. Again, I'll warn you here, it's 115 slides. But let's pretend for a moment that Justin and Brendan are my client, right? And we're having a conversation. One of the things I used to do a lot at Microsoft, and I still do it now, even with some of you on the call, is I like to understand what's your current security environment look like? And I'll probably be asking you some questions. Hey, what kind of products are you using inside the current environment? And you may say, well, for endpoint protection, we actually don't use Defender for Endpoint. Maybe we use SentinelOne. Okay. Well, let's just draw a little box over this here. And instead of Defender for Endpoint, let's draw a box over SentinelOne. All right. Hey, what are you using for identity? You know what? We're using Okta. Okay, fantastic, right? So I'm getting a feel for what you currently have. And as we start to go through this, I may ask you, hey, are you leveraging Azure? Do you have any resources in Azure? And you may say, we do. Okay, great. But do you have anything on premises or in AWS or other clouds? No, we don't. Well, I may take something here like Azure Arc and I may just delete it. And so my point is, as I start to go down this path of questioning, I may start to delete a bunch of items here that are just not relevant. And Brendan, you were kind of talking a little earlier about making this relevant and how this is grouped by icon. I can now start to go through here and clean this up and turn this from this massive, like ideal Microsoft state to where are you at now? And then now we can have a conversation, right? Now, as we start to go through this, and let's just drag Okta over here to the right for just a moment. As we go through this, and for those of you who know identity, you know it's more than just logging in and authentication. There's more to it. So I may start to ask some additional questions. Well, how are you monitoring the dark web? for stolen credentials. And I'm looking for keywords. Oh, we're using another third-party product, or we're not using that at all. So now I'm starting to make a note, and in this reference architecture, I could start to draw additional boxes and make it more of like a roadmap. Hey, future state is we probably need to do dark web monitoring, so intra-identity protection, right? Hey, we probably need to start looking at password lists if you're not doing that today. Okay, let me draw a box over here for a future state. So now I'm capturing current state. I'm getting some ideas here around future state. And now we can start to have a conversation around, okay, how do we prioritize this and then go execute it and get you to where you need to be? Now, one of the questions I used to get asked all the time is, and let's just undo some of this so we have something to look at. I used to get asked all the time, Matt, how do you configure all this stuff? All right, this is a lot to configure, and you're absolutely right. And this is a massive project. If you had all of this, you're talking about 1,000+ hours. But where do you start? You have to have a starting point. Well, that's secure score. And so if we just take a look at our secure score here for just a second, the starting point with this reference architecture is, hey, once we understand what your ideal architecture should be, customer, and we start to put that architecture together, well, let's reference secure score and the recommendations that Microsoft has in secure score as a starting point to get these different security workloads configured. Right. So as I look at recommended actions, I can bring up my filter and I can start to pick between the different security products. So for example, with Intra, if we go back to our reference architecture there, on the far right side, you see Intra, you see passwordless and Intra ID protection, those things. Well, if I go to secure score and I look at Intra, and let's just filter Intra, I'll start to see some recommendations for Intra. And these are recommendations for me to go in and configure something for Intra. Now, it doesn't mean that when you configure all these things that you're 100% protected and this is everything. No, it's just a starting point. So when we think about that roadmap, if you're on Okta and we have a conversation around, look, you're already paying for Intra under your existing licensing. And if you're ready to move off of Okta to Intra, great. The first step in that roadmap of that plan is let's go do some basic security hardening of Intra. Here's how we can get started. And now we can start to monitor our progress against it. So secure score can be used as a way to help me get started in that roadmap. But if we go back to this, that's one element of it. Mm-hmm. Now, the second element, and Brendan, we could talk a little bit about the story we had with that client the other day, but the second element is how do you operationalize this? So I'm going to pause before I get to operationalizing. I'm sure you guys have some questions, so hit me up here.
Well, the main thing I wanted to point out is, I liked how you put Okta up there, SentinelOne. But the thing that I think really resonates for me is this one slide. These products they're made to go together, right? It's one platform, and they're all Microsoft. And so Defender for Endpoint is made to go with Intra, and it's made to go with Sentinel. It's made to go with all these other products. When you start throwing in these other things, the architecture that we're now having to build out to integrate SentinelOne with all these other things makes where this already looks complex. I can only imagine how complex it would be if you start adding best of breed. Everything has to be best of breed. Like, imagine what a reference architecture would have to look like to get all of those things to work together.
Yeah. Well, that's a great point. So let's maybe play that movie out a little bit, and let's maybe add some additional third-party solutions here on this slide. If we look at the lines on this slide, the lines are really important. And what the lines are depicting is integration. And so, part of the Microsoft story here is the Microsoft security products, they natively integrate with each other. In many cases, you don't have to do anything. Some cases you have to check a box, but that's it. I don't have to go pay a developer. I don't have to go hire a systems integrator. It's already pre-integrated. Now, in this current architecture, we have Okta, SentinelOne, and maybe some third-party security. Hey, those are great solutions. But to get those fully integrated with the rest of the Microsoft architecture, that might require some effort, right? We probably have to make an investment. We're going to have to go work with some developers, hire a systems integrator. That's assuming the APIs are there. That's assuming these providers allow you to do that.
Yeah.
Right. So then there's some considerations around, well, am I really getting the full return on my security investment? Because in the event of an incident, are these products really going to behave the way I'm expecting them to? Or because there's no integration or the integration's limited, are we going to have now gaps in our visibility and gaps in how we can respond? So it's also, and I think you bring up a great question, it's also considering how these things are integrated, and is this actually doing what I think it's doing?
Well, and I'll even throw another thought to operationalize this image right here. So once you've got this picture like this, here's the real beauty of it. Once, as you said, Justin, once the client starts to see, hey, I think it would be a bad idea to move off of SentinelOne. Now the question becomes, if you're already paying for SentinelOne, when does it renew? What's the renewal? How many licenses are those? Because how many of us have had a call from a client 30 days before a managed engine renewal to determine if Intra is, or if Intune is going to be the right replacement solution? Well, that's not enough time to test it, prove it, migrate it, and get off of managed engine in time. That's just not enough time. But if you can create this picture and maybe even create an adjoining spreadsheet that has these products, the current spend, renewal dates, you can start to plan the transition from these tools to the migration platform. So that's why this is such a valuable tool, especially if you're really going to help them do this. You got to know when these things are going to renew. And there's no better way than to create a picture, identify those products, and get it on paper. And that should be billable. You should be able to do that for a billable engagement. That doesn't need to be a free exercise, but that's how you could really, I think, use this tool to make it happen and not be on your heels when the client calls with 30 days left and you're stuck. They'll just have to renew it for another year, and there you are waiting for another year.
Yep.
None of us wants to be in that position, right? So that's where I see a really huge advantage to going down this path with using tools like this.
It sparks the conversation, right?
Yeah.
Because let's take IT out of it for a second. From a financial perspective, which at the end of the day, that's all that matters, is the finances of it. You may be double paying, triple paying if you've got third-party point solutions on here. You may already own the Microsoft equivalent. Now, you may be happy with that third-party solution, but what's the finances look like, right? It's got to make sense.
Yeah. Yep.
But in many cases, and what I've discovered throughout my career in security, many cases, customers, they don't know what they don't know. So I've actually been told, hey, I didn't realize Microsoft can do single sign-on. Why do I have Okta? Well, let's talk through it, right? But they may also come back, which has happened to me, and say, hey, look, I love Okta. I get I'm double paying. I get it, Matt, but we've made a huge investment. We're not moving away from it. Okay, great. Well, now let's talk through from a security perspective, how can we make sure that it's integrated so that we're mitigating vulnerabilities and threats and we've got our bases covered? That's where this could be helpful to understand, well, where are those gaps, right? And are we fully utilizing Okta, and are we fully integrating it with Microsoft? And what you'll probably find out is that it's probably easier just to migrate to Intra. But you got to start somewhere with the conversation.
Shannon, you had a question. You started to.
Yeah, go for it.
No, you kind of touched on that point, because when you started talking about this, my only question is, if this is this the entire Microsoft stack, and is this associated to like a higher like licensing, right? Because we don't really talk a lot with partners about license like E5 or something, right? Like this, is that what this would encompass, like all these workloads? And the other question I was going to ask you is, how do you, and you pretty much addressed it, like how do you address a customer who says, like, I get that, how much is all this going to cost? And you can always come back and say, well, if you have all this stuff that all works together and integrates better, like what's the cost savings, or like what's the difference in having the entire stack versus having different third-party solutions, together. But then I guess there would be customers who would also say, like, I really like this tool and the cost doesn't matter to me. So I was just wondering, like, as a partner, if they are using other third-party tools, could they use this as this reference architecture to say it might be more cost effective for you to have, an upgrade and license, like an upsell, and having all these products to kind of address your security gaps, if I'm not.
I'm glad you brought that up. Great question. I'm going to answer in two parts. First part is, don't forget about, let me drag it over here into the screen. Don't forget about the business case builder. bcb.transform.microsoft.com. This used to be the value calculator. And the business case builder allows me to go in and plug in a customer's environment, right? So I can come in here and I can start to plug in licensing and what we're trying to sell them. So if we just quickly plug in some numbers here, all right, let's get them to E5, and we're going to do it for 500 seats. Well, now I can go to the current environment tab, and it's going to allow me, give it a moment, it's going to allow me to go through different categories of security products and then start to ask questions of the customer. Hey, what are you using for VPN? And when I hear things like we're using Cisco AnyConnect, great, how much are you paying for it? We're paying whatever a month, right? Let's just make this up, $1,000 a month. I don't know if that's really it, but hey, we're paying $1,000 a month. So I could start to ask some pointed questions to get on paper. What are you using that's third party? And then at the end of this, I can get a nice graph, and I can export this out to a PowerPoint if I want. That gives me, and this is not scientific, right? We just did this on the fly, but that gives me a nice ROI timeline here. If we were to replace those third-party solutions with what you already own, or if we were to step you up to E5 or even E3, if we were to step you up, here's a predicted ROI that you might be able to expect, right? And so that's the business case builders. That's kind of number one, to facilitate that conversation. But number two is, let's talk about security for security. So if we've got these third-party solutions, let's really understand, are they doing what you think they're doing? So for example, the integrations with the other Microsoft products. So the one I always use is, let's pretend for a moment you have a computer and that computer gets ransomware. Well, if you were using Defender for Endpoint and the computer was managed by Intune and you're using Azure AD or Intra, and the moment it gets ransomware, this whole thing talks to each other, and then your user account can automatically be disabled. The computer can automatically be isolated in real time, and threat is still on the computer, but it's isolated from the rest of the environment. So now if we talk about how you use SentinelOne today and how you use Okta today, can you still get that same outcome? Now the answer is probably no, but can you still get that same outcome? If you want that outcome, then we got to go figure out, how do we make some investments here to get all this stuff integrated, talking to each other, assuming it can be done. Or let's maybe look at how we can reach that outcome using the Microsoft native tools. So that's another way to kind of address it. And then the other part, I used to have this conversation all the time with partners when I was at Microsoft. What does skill set look like? Now I got to go hire people that know SentinelOne. That has a cost. I got to go hire people that know Okta. I got to go hire people that know the third-party tool. Again, fantastic products, but that comes at a premium. I got to understand that I have that talent so that when something does happen, they know how to go triage these different third-party products. Native Microsoft, it's already integrated. It's number one, some of that triage may not even need to happen, but two, if you have a skill set in Microsoft security, then you're covered. So there's a lot to consider. And let me just, to further illustrate your question there, Shannon, let's fast forward a little bit to this slide. This is kind of a cool slide. So this is security operations. So the way I think about that previous slide is, that's the architecture. That's all the components that make up my cybersecurity, posture. Well, now how do I operationalize it? Meaning, when an alert comes in, what the hell do I do? Well, we got to think about what kind of metrics we need to hit, right? So there's a thing called MTTR. So for my MSSPs on the call, you know what I'm talking about, but mean time to remediate. How long does it take for me to remediate whatever incident or alert that gets generated? But then there's also MTTA, mean time to acknowledge. How long until I actually identify the alert and acknowledge that, okay, something's going on? I mean, again, we're human. Like, if it happens at 2 a.m, I'm probably not going to see it until I wake up at 7. So I need to have some KPIs involved, but then how am I making sure that I'm seeing all of the alerts and all of the data across the environment? Well, if we look down at the bottom of the slide, we've got all of our third-party solutions. Above that, we've got the Microsoft security stack. Well, I need to be able to collect data logs from everything, all the security products. I need to be able to funnel it up to some kind of a system, typically a SIEM, to be able to then see exactly what's happening, get a sight picture across the entire environment. So I know that if something happens down below, I'm able to actually receive an alert on it. And when you start to think through it from this perspective, and going back to your question, Shannon, we now start to identify gaps in visibility. right? So for example, Matt, wait a second. I don't think I could send logs from my third-party security solution up to a SIEM like Sentinel or Splunk. Well, if you can't send logs, then we can't identify a potential incident, which means we've got a gap of visibility. So then we start to go a little deeper to figure out, okay, how important is that? In the world of security, obviously, if you have gaps in visibility, that could be a problem. So hopefully it helps to answer your question. I think it's an interesting question to unpack, right, with the client.
Definitely. And in my, I was looking at all of this, just understanding like the concept of hybrid of everything too, right? When it comes to visibility, like, there are companies out there, that they have things that are ancient, like legacy things, and then they have things that are aging out. And then now they're trying to touch brand new technologies like IoT or AI. Well, maybe not IoT is not new, but, AI. And so like, as companies are trying to keep up with all the innovation, I'm sure that they have a lot of gaps in their security posture, but they've also acquired a lot of these third-party tools, right? Like they kind of collect them over the years and then they get comfortable with that. So I guess, as a partner, you'd have to using diagrams like this and then trying to get them to understand how vast the Microsoft stack is and how that relates to what they have already, and that might be better. Would be great.
I think it's a great point, Shane. I think what you're identifying is really, if we take a step back, it's consultative selling. Right. So I'm not going to go into the client and just start pitching Microsoft and pitching product, right? I'm going to come in with a set of questions, use some of these slides as maybe a visual aid to facilitate it, but I'm going to ask them some questions to get an idea of where they're at today, and then consult them a little bit and advise them a little bit on maybe where I can help them get to tomorrow. And so like a great question to illustrate that point is, hey, fantastic, you got all these great security solutions. What's your MTTR? What's your MTTA? Do you even measure that? Because if you don't know how long it takes for you to acknowledge an alert and then respond to an alert, the best security product in the world is still not going to help you. A human has to be able to jump in and take action. So I think what you're saying is like that consultative selling of understanding where are they at in their journey versus just trying to sell them a solution.
Yeah,
that's probably the better approach, I think, is what you're saying.
Hey, Matt,
Brendan? Yeah.
Can you go back to the main slide?
Yeah.
And there was one other thing I wanted to talk through here. It's my favorite part of the main reference architecture is the very top right. And that is like, so everything that we're talking about as far as like the security products is all of the Microsoft security products, right? And how Microsoft can defend. But I think then people sometimes get lost in the fact that it doesn't just defend Microsoft. You can defend the Google apps. You can defend AWS. You can defend Salesforce. So can you talk through, if you own all of this stuff, it's not just Microsoft 365 that you're defending. Like you can actually implement this for others as well.
I'm glad you brought this up because you know I love this stuff. So I totally forgot about it. Okay, let me illustrate that with a story. Years ago, I had a customer, and that customer had an incident, and that customer owned Dropbox. Their sales department was using Dropbox, and they made a huge investment in it. They did training. They had custom integrations with their apps with Dropbox. They were using Dropbox, and the sales department was using it, but IT had no idea. And so there was an incident with Dropbox. And make a long story short, no single sign-on, no security controls. It was like the consumer version of Dropbox, basically. Well, they had an incident. IT didn't know about it. And so in the after action review, and the partner I was working with at the time, in the after action review, we went through and did an analysis, and we said, you know what? Stay on Dropbox. You're getting that much value out of it. Keep using it. But let's integrate Dropbox into your security stack here so we can now start to secure it. So let's integrate it into Azure AD or Intra for single sign-on. So you have the same username and password, right? Let's integrate it into things like conditional access so that you can only access it from your work computer. Let's integrate it into Microsoft Purviews so that we can apply sensitivity labels and encrypt the data in Dropbox. Let's use the fantastic product Defender for Cloud Apps to be able to go through and protect Dropbox, monitor Dropbox. Let's extend our security out to that third-party product. And I think that's something that, frankly, a lot of partners often miss. They're like, oh, I got to go sell Office 365 or Microsoft 365. I got to go sell the whole Microsoft stack. You're not wrong. But if we can meet the client where they're at, over time, they'll migrate. And that's actually what happened with this client. Fast forward 7 years, they actually got on OneDrive. But if I could meet them where they're at and go integrate with Dropbox or G Suite or Google Workspace or Slack or name any of the SaaS apps that are out there that this thing supports, it's a great starting point to start to bring that third party. But that now we're getting into a conversation. So again, you as CEO of this company, I can now start to bring this up and I can say, hey, Justin, we're not doing this, but hey, we're using Slack. We're using these third-party products like Dropbox. Here's what we're doing to protect those as well. And now that starts a great conversation. But then now we could have a conversation around, do the financials make sense for us to keep those third-party products, right? Are we getting the value? Like it sparks all this other conversation. But yeah, using the Microsoft security products like Defender for Cloud Apps to secure third-party is doable. And that's a huge conversation starter with these customers. What third-party SaaS products are you using? Are you using Dropbox? What are you using?
Well, this
and
this
then
is
how
where
are you securing it?
I think there's a couple things that I would make sure that everybody like follows here. One is it's a great foot in the door, right? So if somebody's using these third-party products and nobody's talking to them about security, this is a way that you can come in and talk about advanced security with Microsoft to come in and do everything. But it's also, you have to understand, like, not all this stuff is just turned on, right? So I'm thinking about like Dynamics. I just went to the Dynamics conference a couple weeks ago, talked to a lot of Dynamics partners over there. They don't leverage all of this stuff to secure Dynamics, which is like the holy grail of everything every cyber hacker wants in the world is living in Dynamics. All the customer information, all the ERP information, all that stuff is all there. But then you have to leverage this to secure that data. So there's two things here. One, like understand that you have to properly implement this so you can go secure the Microsoft stack, because the customer probably owns all this stuff. And if you're not doing that, it's also your competitor's way in the door as well. So even if they're using Dynamics or Microsoft 365, if you're not doing this properly, somebody's going to come in, a SentinelOne's going to come in, Okta is going to come in and say, oh, yeah, you're not getting this with Microsoft. Look, this isn't protected. Well, it's not protected because you didn't turn it on.
Yeah. Well, and to add to what you're saying, Justin, what you're highlighting is that no matter what you're implementing, and I'm sharing my screen now, this is the well-architected framework pillars.
Can you zoom in on it a little bit? A little small.
Yeah, let me do that. But these are the pillars, right, that all cloud providers agree are pretty consistent. Although AWS had to throw a sixth one in there, right? So to be different. But they all believe security is critical, right? So as you said, Justin, right, there isn't a single project that anybody on this call is doing that you shouldn't be thinking about security. And that's why the reference architecture is so great, is whether it's Dynamics, whether it's a custom app, whether it's a migration, the security conversation really needs to be had. So if you're not having it, highly encourage you to start feeling comfortable and trying to figure out a way to get that to be part of it.
And I just wanted to throw out there, I was looking at something on LinkedIn, like somebody had posed, like another cybersecurity evangelist had posed and said, and it kind of blew my mind what he said. He said, if AI is in your business, but AI isn't in your defense, you're falling behind. AI is already in your workflows, your customer interactions, your supply chain, and yes, in the hands of attackers too. Every advantage you gain from AI is a threat actor can match or surpass. And so I thought that was very interesting because, like you said, and what Justin has said, like, you have to secure that data. It doesn't matter what cloud platform that you're on. And now that we're moving towards AI and people are just, and companies are trying to adopt these things and then trying to figure out where to put their data, whether it's in the cloud or on-prem, like that has to be a major part of the conversation. So
Hey,
I love it.
Matt, where does Security Copilot fit into the reference architecture?
Oh, good question. All right, let's pull this thing back up.
I think we got a frozen Brendan anyway.
Uh-oh. All right. So let's think about Security Copilot for a second. It does two things right now. Actually, probably three. It allows you to have generative AI, so I can ask it questions. So if an alert comes in, I can ask it questions about that alert. Two, they're just now starting to release agents. So there's an agent right now for conditional access. So over on the far right side here, you'll see conditional access. Well, conditional access is very complex. So how do I know if I have it configured according to best practices and everything? Well, there's an AI agent that can actually review your configuration and give you recommendations. So that's where Security Copilot starting to come into play now, is with these automated agents. And then third, I can run very complex queries to go look at logs and things across all these products. So it augments the security professional. So where it plays is all of these products can plug into Security Copilot. So for example, if I have an alert that comes in and it's for Justin, I can ask it, give me details about that alert. It's going to go look at logs and data across all of the connected Microsoft security products and even some of the third-party products. And it's going to pull that together, and it's going to allow me to understand, in layman's terms even, what's happening with that alert across all these different products. So rather than manually trying to sift through logs, even with Sentinel, trying to do complex database queries with KQL, Security Copilot allows me to do it in fraction of the time because it's just plain language. I'm asking questions. So that can be really valuable, right? Especially for customers where maybe they're not security professionals and they really need to be able to respond to alerts quickly. That could be a huge benefit. Or for the partners out there, if you run this in a managed service, Security Copilot could really help you with that. But I get excited about the agents. And the agents is, they release a conditional access agent, looks for best practices and configuration. There's one coming out for Defender for Office. I just got email on the other day. You're going to start to see more and more of this, so that when we look at this, let's make sure things are properly configured. But let's also use AI to go discover new threats, even research the threats that come up, and be able to even maybe respond to it. It's really the beginning, but you definitely want to think about, how am I using AI in my security architecture, right? Because you can't keep up with all the threats and vulnerabilities, something like Security Copilot can definitely add value. Is that where you were going with the question?
Yeah, I'm excited about that, and where Security Copilot is going, and Microsoft. I mean, just like regular Copilot, it's getting so much better every single day. Yeah. But then, like, we were talking about the apps earlier, and my favorite security product, I think is Defender for Cloud Apps. And what I always loved about Defender for Cloud Apps was a shadow IT assessment. But now that we're in the age of AI, how do you leverage that tool for like a shadow AI assessment? And like you were talking about with Box and Dropbox and all these third-party SaaS apps, like, is there a way that we can leverage this? Because look, almost every customer out there has got AI sprawl, and they don't even know what their people are putting on credit cards. So how can we leverage these security products and then come back and say, look, if they're using them, we should at least know. And then if they're going to use them, let's protect them. Let's use Purview. Let's do some other things. So how do we do that?
Yeah, it's a great call out. So let's see if the page wants to refresh. So this is Defender for Cloud Apps, and this is our environment. So give this a moment to load. We can use Defender for Cloud Apps to discover all of the SaaS apps that are in use across the company. And so if Justin was my client, or actually let's say Shannon was my client, I can come in with a trial license of Defender for Cloud Apps. There might even be an incentive program for this for partners, but I can come in with a trial license, and I can run this for a period of time, collect the data, and then come back to Shannon with a nice report and analysis of, here's all the apps that your employees are using on a daily basis. Boy, this is taking its time to load. Here's a list of all the apps your employees are using on a daily basis. And then we can start to get an interesting conversation. We can ask questions around, did you know you were using ChatGPT and Grok and Copilot and whatever the Google one is? Okay, interesting. You knew you were using that. Okay. Well, how are you protecting data to make sure your client's PII is not being uploaded to those AI products? Like, we can start to get into a lot of questioning to get you down a path of, hey, if you want to use those AI products, not a problem. Microsoft has technology there that can help secure those AI products. But the shadow IT discovery is a starting point with that to trigger that conversation. So here, it finally loaded. Okay, let's filter in a category here. Let's go down to generative AI. This is our environment. So let's see what's going on with our employees. but this thing's taking its time. But it's going to come back and it's going to show us. I know we're using ChatGPT and some other AI products. It's going to show us some AI products, and then I'll be able to see. Yeah, here you go. So then if I drill into one of these, I can start to see usage. I'm not going to go into that detail here on the call, but I can start to see usage, and then I can start to see who's using it. And I can even go in and look at details of that particular app. I can see on a scale of 1 to 10, and you see it over on the far right, how secure or not secure is it? And Microsoft has different ways that they rate these apps. So then I can start to have a conversation with Shannon as my client around, hey, you're using this generative AI solution within your company called you.com, whatever that is. It has a score of 8. If I click on that, here's maybe the things it's not securing. But help us understand the use case of that. Help us understand how you're securing your data with that. Do you even know that you're using it? And one of two things she's going to say. She's going to say, I don't know. Or she's going to say, I know. And one of the proposals I can make is, hey, why don't we come in with some additional project here to maybe do some research. Let's go interview those end users. Let's go understand how they're using it. And then let's start talking about, if you want to keep you.com, not a problem. Let's figure out how we go integrate with it and extend our security architecture out to it. So again, the shadow, and Justin, what you're saying, I mean, the shadow IT assessment with this product, it allows you to get your foot in the door, have some really valuable conversations that hopefully could lead to next steps of a ton of projects. But it brings value, right? And so going back to Brendan's point, this is ultimately what the senior leadership of the company wants to know is, are we spending money on the right things? Are we protected from cybersecurity threats? What's our compliance posture? Boy, we didn't even talk about that. How do these different apps, these generative AI apps, impact your compliance posture, especially if you comply with something like GDPR or even HIPAA? But it allows that boardroom kind of conversation. And I really believe all of this creates stickiness. And you don't have to be a security partner, right? So like for my Dynamics friends on the call, and Justin, you mentioned it earlier, Dynamics and really any CRM, that's the lifeblood of the company.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So then as a Dynamics partner, how can you secure Dynamics? How can you maybe go partner with a security partner to help you secure Dynamics? So you have a good story to go back to your client with, hey, here's how we're securing it, and here's how that's going to impact your compliance. Anyway.
Hey, and sorry, I dropped a minute ago. I was in mid-sentence, okay. I think, a minute ago. So, but no, good stuff. And Matt, do you mind going back to the reference architecture?
Sure.
I'm not sure where I dropped. So I would just want to finish one thought that, Matt, you and I run into this all the time. And the other way you can use this picture, I'll call it, to really, I would say, even probably increase deal sizes for everybody in this call. I can't tell you how many times we get calls from clients who think they need a product. And by using this picture, you can kind of ground the conversation, not so much in what is Purview and what is all the things that it can do, but more around what are you as a client trying to accomplish? What are you trying to achieve? So you can kind of navigate around really the business need as opposed to just explaining what Purview does and hoping that the way you explain the product met the need. So Matt, what was, we had a call about a week or two ago. I think the customer they thought they needed Sentinel, right? Wasn't that the app?
They thought they needed Sentinel.
Yeah, so go ahead.
One of our partners brought us in to talk about Sentinel, and fantastic. We get on the call with the client. I start asking them some questions. So do you have Sentinel today? No, we don't. Okay, what do you use as a SIM today? What's a SIM? Okay, how are you? Well, actually, tell me what security products do you have in your environment? We don't know. Okay, how do you know you want Sentinel? Well, we just heard about it, and we thought it's a security product from Microsoft, and that would make us secure. Okay, well, what are your objectives with security? What are you trying to do, and why are you trying to do it? Well, we don't know yet, but we want to figure that out. Okay, so the conversation quickly turned from them wanting to hear about Sentinel, which I was happy to do a demo. I would have wasted their time. It transformed from that conversation into, let's talk about a holistic security architecture, and let's help you identify your security objectives and what you're trying to get out of it. And so we showed them this slide, and as we started walking through it, they're like, you know what? We don't really know what security products we have. That's a different team. All right, well, let's go talk to that team. We have E3. Do we own the Defender XDR stack? Well, yeah, you own some of it, absolutely. Well, how do we make sure we're monitoring that? So the conversation turned into a bunch of miniature conversations. And for us and the partner, it generated a project and generate some outcomes. But all it was just using these slides and walking through logically,
Exactly.
what are you trying to do? Why are you trying to do it? And that's, I think, the core difference. Maybe we leave everybody with, it's not about solution selling. It's about consultative selling. It's about understanding where your client's at and then helping them understand maybe how you can get them to where they want to go.
Yeah.
But you have to identify their needs first.
Yeah, and to your point,
architecture allows you to do it.
Yeah, to your point, I mean, a lot of these Microsoft products, we all know they're bundles, right? I call it the Happy Meal, right? Purview. Purview is a bunch of things. It's a bunch of things. And that is right now, in my opinion, what is making the phones ring. A lot of people are curious about Purview. They want to have a Purview conversation. Well, again, it's like the Swiss Army knife. There's a lot of things that it can do. So rather than just try to walk through all 10 features of what Purview is, use that reference architecture as a way to chunk the conversation up to the functional needs, what the company's trying to accomplish and do, and then drill your way back into the tech stack. But that's okay, right? That's what's making the phones ring. Great. Take the Purview call, but use that picture to navigate a conversation that's a little more holistic. That, I think, will help you increase deal sizes, help make sure as clients are needing to renew and maybe transition from non-Microsoft products to Microsoft products, you're not getting that 30-day, notice like, oh my God, we got 30 days. Like, well, let's map it out a little bit and help you manage this. So anyway, those are some thoughts that I thought would really help the folks on the call today think through. Go ahead.
Yeah, one thing I'd love to wrap with, Matt, is like, okay, so you guys have really set the stage for having some great conversations with people. And one of the things that we're really trying to help partners with is leverage the funding that Microsoft has. And there are 3 workshops that Microsoft has, right? There's a threat protection, data security, and modern SecOps. You get paid $8,000 each for those. From having this conversation, how would you propose that partners can leverage the funding programs that Microsoft has to take that next step?
Yeah, I think it's the next step coming out of this conversation with the client. So, hey, we're going to talk about where you're at today and maybe where we want to take you. The immediate next step to get started, let's go run a threat protection workshop. Let's go run a data security workshop. Let's go run a security operations workshop. Let's jump into these products with your team and let's explore the value of what these products have to offer with your team. But we're going to do it in your environment. So you're going to be able to see your data and these products in action. So you can see the value of this. And then from there, we can have a conversation around, do you want to move forward with actually getting these designed and deployed in your production environment? But that's the immediate next step so that we can have some in-depth conversations with your technical team, your security team around how this would work, how these would get deployed, and even give them hands-on. So I see those as like the immediate next step coming out of this conversation with kind of the decision makers of let's bring the team together and let's start to do a deep dive into these. Now, again, there's 3 programs, so we got to figure out which one we want to go after first. Hell, you might go after all 3.
But to your point, Justin, though, for every single one of those programs, they're all designed to help you guys get ongoing work beyond the workshop, right? That's not the end game, right? The workshop is to set you up for more work. There's no reason why every one of those workshops or engagements shouldn't include, as a part of the assessment, this document right here to assess and document what's your current environment look like. Everyone should use this. There's no reason why it shouldn't, because the point of it is you're trying to get follow-on work. So having a picture of what the current environment looks like is the basis for how you're going to do it. This is the best way to do it. So, and I'll tell you this, every time I've shown this to clients who've never seen it before, it kind of blows them away. Like their jaws collectively drop. I'm sure some of you on this call have even seen that happen when you've done it.
Well, I have a quote for that. Microsoft is a security company you never heard of. The biggest security company you never heard of. And this slide does a really good job of illustrating that. And it opens up the door for additional conversation.
Yep.
And Shannon, thanks for posting in the chat window the new security funding programs for FY26. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of opportunity here.
Yeah, and just by how much they're offering for these incentives and just the fact that security is its own solution area, they didn't consolidate with anything. It just shows you that I think Microsoft is sick of being the security company that no one ever heard of. I think they really are depending on you partners to go out there and let these customers know, like, you probably already own this. Like, let's see how it works. And honestly, that slide with the architecture, like, that really tied it all together for me. Like, I thought I was a little scared too to bring that up in the master calls. Like, maybe people get blown away by it, but honestly, for me, someone who's very new to all of this, like, this really tied it together for me. So if it ties it together for me, I know that if you're a customer, that it will tie it together for them too. Like, people, I mean, it's the picture thing. Like, people need to see it all on one, you know, pane of glass. So
that's why I call it the iceberg. This is the iceberg. Like, you're not, when you talk about identity access, that's a tip, or information protection, that's the tip of the iceberg. This is the iceberg right here. This is it.
Yep.
So,
and when we think about funding, like, we've got those 3 workshops that we just mentioned. Well, that just gets you in the door. After you've done those workshops, there's other funding programs like the Sentinel Modernization Program, right? If you have an existing SIN like Splunk, we got to migrate you to Sentinel. There's funding for that. We start thinking about things like Defender for Cloud. How are you protecting Azure, AWS, GCP on-prem? There's funding for that. So the gift keeps on giving, right? And we can even compound these. But the starting point is this reference architecture and building a reference architecture for the client. Let me leave you all with this, and then Shane, you can wrap us up. The best advice I'll give the partners on the call: go do this for yourself. So internally, I want you all to go have, no matter how big you are, how small you are, go have the conversations internally. How do we build an architecture like this for us? Go have the business conversations with your CFO, your CEO, your board of directors. If you can figure out how to do all of this and everything I just talked about for yourself, this will be easy to go do for your clients. So I'll leave you with that. Thanks, Shannon, for organizing this as always. Justin, Brendan, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.